Welcome back to Wrestling Roundtable Radio. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. I've been working in wrestling almost 7 years now, coming up on that. Here we are back again. I guess it wasn't the last edition of Wrestling Roundtable Radio last time, and I didn't think it really would be. But as it turned out, I was just trying to be cautious because we were in, like I said, preliminary negotiations with a couple different groups, mainly one. And looks like that's not going to happen. I guess the deal kind of fell through. It wasn't on our end, but looks like that's not going to happen, and I guess thankfully not affect the show. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be talking to everybody because you people listening right now on blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Roundtable or GoFightLive.tv or via Wrestling Roundtable, however you're listening to us, live at 11 p.m. on Tuesday nights, you guys are the real fucking fans of the Wrestling Roundtable. You guys are our circle of friends here at the Roundtable, and you are the diehards. You're not waiting after the fact like on YouTube. You're talking in the chat room. You're posting on Facebook. You're on our message board. You guys are the real fans, and I appreciate you tuning in every time we have a show. You click attend when I send out the events on Facebook, or Jamal or Will or whoever sends them out. So I'm really glad to be back and talking to everybody. I'm excited. I was very antsy and jittery tonight. I was very well prepared, and it wasn't one of those shows where I'm real scrambling at the last second. We're about to go on the air. This time I was all set, and I couldn't wait to talk to you. I couldn't wait to talk to the panelists. I couldn't wait to talk to callers, and the call number is 347-857-4647. We want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. Doesn't even have to be about anything we're talking about. You could be like, hey, do you think Demolition should have beat the Colossal Connection at WrestleMania 6? It's something out of fucking left field. I don't even care. I'm just glad to be talking to you, and I'm glad to introduce the panel right now because first up, I want to introduce our special radio panelist from Chicago. Her name is Coriander Ake. Hello, Corey.
Hello, Eric. Hello, everyone.
Will Brooks. Hello, Will.
Hello, everyone. I wanted everyone to know that, yes, I did survive Hurricane Irene, but I want to let you all know that it's going to be nothing compared to Hurricane William when we finally come around.
I'm sure we'll be talking about Hurricane Irene later on because that certainly affected some things that are going on here in the world of Wrestling Roundtable. The other Will, the other half of Battle of the Wills. In the first half, Will Brooks is in our chat room on WrestlingRoundtable.com every Monday night during Raw, but the other half of the Battle of the Wills is Will Vafides, otherwise known as TLD, and he is on our line now. Hello, TLD.
Hello to all of my and Wrestling Roundtable fans. I am having a wonderful week since I lost 4 days of power, but I'm back. I'm back on Facebook. I'm back on TLDWrestling.com, and I cannot wait to talk about all the great stuff we have, MMA, wrestling, everything else.
Yeah, and by everything else, don't forget WrestlingRoundtable.com because, man, are there a lot of things for you there. Lots of updates this week. Two news updates. All the fucking news that you need because just look at the amount of ridiculousness that we saw, Rodney, in this past week alone between one day Brock Lesnar's retiring, the doctor said so, then Dana White comes out and says no, and now look, we're about to talk about Brock Lesnar's next fight in December. Same thing with Sin Cara. He got sent home. They're not going to use him. Hunico is going to be him from now on, not Mystico. And then it's like, oh, no, they turned him heel because they're going to do Sin Cara versus Sin Cara. People just can't make up their minds. Unlike here at WrestlingRoundtable.com, we give you the facts. I actually do research. I try and give you the important information that you need. And in addition to the news updates, we also have new polls. We have a new match from ACPW. Alex Payne, who has been on our show many times, taking on Peli Primo in Payne's first match back on American soil last year when he came back in September from touring with Pro Wrestling Noah. In addition to that, we also have lots of recaps. King Kong Bundy, The Missing Matches, a VHS containing lots of matches from CWA and AWA, etc., but King Kong Bundy seems mysteriously absent in a lot of them. I never understood that title. It's probably one of those VHSs you see in the discount bins. VHS, what is that? But we also have the Bash at the Beach 96, WCW's very pivotal pay-per-view, and also from Deron Browning, the Wrestle Kingdom 2007, the first Wrestle Kingdom Japanese event. So lots of new recaps for you, and we will be catching up on the Raw and SmackDown and now NXT archives from Zach Fellows and Bill Treadway when we can. But if you want to look up any past show that we've ever done, Roundtable Radio or the video show, it is at blogtalkradio.com. We have every show that we've ever done on Blog Talk Radio. So that's, I believe, over 80 shows or so. Jeez, we've been doing this a little while, Rod. So I want to introduce you, Rodney LeConte. How you doing, Rod?
I'm good, Eric, and what a week. How you been?
Exhausted, man. I mean, we were just touching upon Hurricane Irene before, and I know you and I were having trouble even communicating that night.
Yeah.
Just between the power going out during the pay-per-view of UFC in Rio and cell phone problems and, oh yeah, that flooding that happened. Man, I've spent probably half the week up in Manville, and you really should see that place. It's a fucking disaster area. It feels almost like you're in the aftermath of Katrina. I mean, it's not nearly as bad, so I don't want to take away anything from what happened there, but, I mean, FEMA's all over the place. You see people's belongings, the insides of houses all over the streets, on the sidewalk. And even when you're driving into town, you can see the water level on the trees and the bridges where all the sediment that was in the water left this rust-colored coat all over everything. And it would have gone above your head. People's cars were gone. It was really bad over there in New Jersey. And you guys up in New York City lucked out. Because it wasn't so bad when it touched down in Brooklyn, but lots of New Jersey got flooded out. So that sucks, but let's focus on the positive, because if you got to see it uninterrupted, UFC 34 in Rio the other weekend was an incredible show. The return to Brazil for the first time in a really long time, actually, and a very quick sellout. I wanted to start off, actually, with the prelims that aired on Spike, specifically the middleweight bout between Rousimar Palhares and Dan Miller, which went to unanimous decision for Rousimar. But, man, this was probably one of the stupidest moments I've ever seen in MMA. If you've seen the fight, you know what I'm talking about. But in the first round, Palhares knocked Dan Miller down, and he was really laying in the punches on him. Now, the story he says, or his camp says rather, is that he heard Dan Miller saying, "Stop, stop, stop," and he thought it was the referee, and that's why he stopped. I don't really believe that myself, because just watching it, it just seemed like he just stopped. The referee, Herb Dean, didn't even move in to get him off the Dan Miller, and he just jumps up on the cage like he's celebrating. And as Ray A. Cool 92 says in our chat room, that was a fail. Just very embarrassing, unbelievable. And then a minute later, he gets down, they restart the fight. Dan Miller almost knocks him out. How poetic would that have been? But as it was, those Miller boys are really fucking tough, Rod. And Dan Miller survived, but still lost the unanimous decision. So what do you think about that fight and that ridiculous moment with Palhares?
Eric, that was the real fight of the night. I'm not going to give it to Ross Pearson, but that fight definitely was really back and forth. I thought that Dan Miller could be finished, actually, a bunch of times. That moment, it was Palhares. That guy, he's like a loose cannon almost. The last time I saw him was Nate Marquardt fight, and he thought that Nate Marquardt either tapped or he looked at the referee thinking to be stopped, and he let his guard down, and then Marquardt took advantage and got the TKO. And this was a pretty silly moment. I've heard that he's pulled stuff like this before. I don't know what his deal is, but he ended up still winning the fight. Hey, but it was just a really absurd moment because there was no tap. There was nothing that even looked like a tap. I don't know why he would think that he said stop, stop, stop. I mean, I didn't even see Dan Miller's lips move, and you can tell that, like, after Palhares went on the cage, Dan Miller actually looks pissed, thinking that the fight was stopped. I don't know what he was thinking, Eric, but I'm just glad I got to see that nonsense live.
Hey, it was a great fight, yeah. And like I said, Dan Miller took a real vicious beating and stayed in there, but that was just very embarrassing, very silly. It was pretty close in weight, maybe like a 1 pound difference or so. I can't believe that Palhares was the middleweight, looking juiced out of his fucking mind. I just couldn't believe his physique, really. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, he just looks huge, and just think about what he would look like at welterweight.
Okay, I pointed out there's a very close weight difference there, but the height difference was there. He was a little stockier, I guess. But, man, just looking at him, I was like, how did this guy pass the drug test? But let's move on to the main card, where the 3 main matches promoted were Brazilian sweeps, pretty much. I'm glad I don't bet or do fantasy league for this shit, because the Brendan Schaub Big Nog fight went the exact opposite way that I would have predicted. Kind of like how Tito Ortiz got that victory over Ryan Bader, I did not expect whatsoever. I pretty much guessed that Brendan Schaub was going to knock Rodrigo out. I thought it was going to be probably even a first-round knockout, but all that layoff time that he had and the multiple surgeries and stuff, this guy, Antonio Rodrigo Minotauro Nogueira, which is, I love when Bruce Buffer announces his fights because it's the longest name intro.
Yeah.
He looks so beat up. He's only 35, but he looks 20 years older. This was his 40th MMA fight and his first in Brazil. He only lives a couple miles away, and this, and I just compared it to the Tito Ortiz fight, may have actually beat out the Tito Ortiz fight for the feel-good moment of the year, because this Pride veteran came back in his home country after all these wars and time off and injuries and blah, 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 and he came back and beat this guy who just knocked Crow Cop the fuck out in New Jersey this year, and I really thought he was going to add another legend, specifically Pride legend, to his record, but that's not what happened at all. I was very shocked, but very happy. So what do you think about Big Nog and Brendan Schaub?
Very shocking. I thought the same thing, Eric. Minotauro was finishing 2 of his last 3 fights with the way Brendan Schaub's been steamrolling through guys, the way he really outstruck Gabriel Gonzaga and knocking out Crow Cop. I mean, he's just been on a tear. And I really thought that this guy's a name that heavyweights are going to start to have to look out for after this fight. And I was proven wrong, and I wasn't upset about it at all. I mean, it was just one of those moments where I really jumped out of my seat, and I was like, holy shit. I mean, what a proud moment. I'm a big fan of Big Nog. To see him get that knockout to get the finished victory, you can't help but be proud of the guy.
Especially after seeing him humbled. Now, the Mir fight, we all know now he went in sick. I still would love to see a rematch because I think it wouldn't turn out the way it did the first time. But after being humbled not only in the Mir fight, but in that fight with Velasquez in Australia, man, he looked like this guy's chin might be gone, like Chuck Liddell. He's beat up. He's getting up there. But I think this fight disproved that. So hopefully Nogueira's back.
I don't know if he's back, but he definitely showed me that, wow, he's still got fight left in this old guy. So like you guys, I had Schaub kicking his ass. It was shocking to see Big Nog do it. I mean, I like Big Nog too, but yeah, I thought he had no gas left in the tank. And I thought he was, just like you said, I thought he was in Liddell territory with the striker or the old fighter who has no chin left. Apparently he only got missed on the boat because Forrest Griffin already took that place from him.
And that's the fight we're moving on to next, because in the
that's why I segue to it.
Thank you. In the light heavyweight division, Mauricio Shogun Rua coming back after losing the title in Newark to John Jones earlier this year, and facing Forrest Griffin once again, first round knockout for the Brazilian. And a lot of people saying, well, Forrest Griffin's head might not have been in the game because his wife was pregnant and she actually went into labor 9 days early, I think, or so, right as that was happening, more or less. And I don't know. Forrest Griffin I've never been a big fan of, and I know he's got a job for life, him and Stephan Bonner after The Ultimate Fighter years ago, which is fine. I appreciate loyalty, and that's cool that he helped build UFC with this historic big fight. But I don't think he's really been in contention or been a threat for a while. And Shogun, on the other hand, is still rather young, which is funny because he is a Pride veteran too, but he's still young. He looked pretty good as well. So what do you think about that fight, Will Brooks?
Again, I'm a big Forrest Griffin fan, mostly because he's so goofy and funny, and his fighting style is you just can't put like a lock on it. You can't tell if he's a striker or a wrestler or a submission guy. He's very well-rounded, but you can't say he dominates in any way. He's won every single way you can win a fight. I love Forrest Griffin. He's always exciting to watch. But, yeah, he got beat by a guy who was way better than he was. And Shogun is finally back to his old form. Not like when they first fought where Forrest Griffin pulled the upset. Even though Forrest Griffin was really good then, too. Forrest Griffin looks like he's starting to get to that point where he has no chin left, and that was one of the things that made him really good. So it's sad saying this, but I'm sorry, Forrest, the days of being a top contender are over.
More or less. And if he did indeed have a child and it's a boy, I hope he named it Caesar, because he really looks like a chimp. Between his ears and his hairy chest and whatever, he is a goofy-looking guy. And Corey, last time you said that Mark Henry was a big gorilla-looking guy, and I said it was racist. So I just called Forrest Griffin a chimp. What's the difference?
There really isn't one. You know, technically, I've heard some wrestling fans at the shows call Brodus Clay Donkey Kong as well.
Well, I think the double standard difference there is it's like how people can say George Bush looks like a chimp, but if you say Obama looks like a chimp, you're racist. That comes with the territory because one race happened to enslave the other for hundreds of years. But maybe I'm just being hypocritical. So, yeah, Forrest Griffin looks like a chimp. Mark Henry looks like a gorilla. We're all apes anyway. Planet of the Apes is redundant. Fuck it. So, back to the subject at hand. Mauricio Shogun Hua, Forrest Griffin, your thoughts on the fight, Rodney?
I thought that Forrest actually had a chance. You really don't know what to expect when Forrest Griffin fights because he kind of goes in with the attitude where it's like, oh, shucks, I'm going to give him my best shot. You never really see vast improvement. It's almost the same thing with Forrest Griffin fights. He's good on the feet. He's good on the ground. He's not great at any particular thing. He's just an overall good fighter. As far as the fight goes, Shogun just came in with the attitude, kill or be killed. He just wasn't going to lose. Not only is it fighting versus Brazil, but it's going to avenge his first loss in UFC. He really caught Forrest, and once Forrest got a few of those hits, it was the end of the road.
The end of the road happened to be in Brazil for Yushin Okami. The road didn't even get started for his training partner, Charles Sonnen, who wasn't even allowed in the country, more or less, if you believe his story, that he was threatened with arrest if he was even seen. But I guess it was more like a sponsor threatened to pull out of sponsoring Okami if he even showed up. But all the same, Okami trained with Charles Sonnen, who really came off like a dick in the Countdown show. And you know what? He can talk, he cooks a promo and whatever, he's entertaining. But when he was so dismissive about Anderson Silva, and I was like, you know what, man? You got beat by the guy at the last second in one of the greatest moments I've ever seen in MMA, when he was hurt with broken ribs going in, and he's still dissing him. I'm not feeling that. But Anderson Silva has also said since this fight that he hurt his shoulder, I think rotator cuff, and was on some painkillers. I guess there are not a lot of strict commissions in Brazil, and I guess he got through this fight, and really, you couldn't even tell, especially after the first round, which I guess he kind of scouted Okami and what he can expect, and then in the second round, you could see he turned that switch on, and he just turned into Muhammad Ali, and it's almost maddening in a way that he goes in, like with the Forrest Griffin fight a couple years ago, with his hands down, and he just bobs and weaves in and out, and he may take a hit or two, but it doesn't seem to faze him, and then bam, he nails it, and it's just amazing. And again, watching the master at work, keeping the streak going, setting more records. I'm such a huge Anderson Silva fan, and I was really glad to see him get that win back from that stupid Rumble on the Rock bullshit that happened a few years ago. So what do you think about Anderson Silva and how he dealt with Yushin Okami, Rodney LeCompte?
Well, Eric Santamaria, this was the title fight that some people were asking for, but nobody wanted to see. And it basically came to a point where, I just couldn't avoid giving Yushin Okami this fight. And Anderson Silva, I don't know if he felt that Okami was a worthy opponent or what. I felt like I was watching a sparring session. He even gave Okami, I think, a chance when Okami had him up against the fence to see what Okami could do. If he could take him down, what he was going to do. It came to a point where Okami just looked lost. And once he got hit with some of those shots, he looked defeated before he actually got beat. And I think that's what the problem was. I don't know if he was just so overwhelmed with the aura of Anderson Silva fight, being Brazil, being the number one hated guy in the pay-per-view. He just wasn't there. And I actually was surprised to finish this early in that kind of fashion, but hey, it just proves that when you fight Anderson Silva, you better bring an A game or else you better not come at all.
Well, Matt in our chat room just said, I at least thought Okami would get a takedown, and that begs the question, do you think that he made a mistake in more or less standing on his feet for most of that fight and not trying to take him down? We've seen in the past that Anderson Silva's had some trouble with wrestlers like Dan Henderson and, of course, the Sonnen fight. So do you think that Okami just didn't implement a good strategy?
I think he could have tried more. I really don't think it would have made a difference. Dan Henderson, got him down one round, but what did he do in that one round? The only really effective wrestler against Anderson Silva was Joe Sonnen, and Okami does not have the wrestling skills that Sonnen has, so I really don't think that it would have made a huge difference. I don't think he would have been able to implement the game plan that Joe did.
Well, it's funny because when they announced this fight, just on paper, sight unseen, just reading the names, I automatically think, well, Silva's winning this, come on. And what's great about the Countdown show that I mentioned before is their job as advertising the show is to sell you on it, to plant the seed of doubt in your head. Maybe Okami has a chance. And that's one of the brilliant things that they do in their Countdown shows and their hype. They really make you think, even if it's a fight that you've already predetermined in your head is a easy win for Anderson Silva, easy win for GSP. They do make you think, and they do give you that doubt. So it definitely makes you want to see a fight a little more. And it's also MMA. We just talked about Tito Ortiz and Big Nog before. Anything can happen.
First off, Eric, I'm not shocked that you were shocked that Chael Sonnen was a dick on the Countdown. I mean, he's a dick in real life. And I mean, come on, the guy's a fucking politician, for crying out loud. Second of all, I'm not shocked that Anderson Silva was Anderson Silva, which means the killing machine that he is in the octagon. That wasn't shocking to me whatsoever. I didn't think Okami had a chance anyway. The only selling point of this whole fight was that Okami was the last guy to beat Anderson Silva. Even that was questionable to begin with. I had no reason to watch that fight. There wasn't anything that sold me to say, oh, wow, Okami versus Silva, kick ass, let me see that. There was nothing. Nothing at all. I was not interested, didn't care. The pay-per-view was pretty cool, but the only thing that was cool about it was all these Brazilians winning in Brazil.
Brazil is a place that they're going to be coming back to. They've made motions that they're going to come back for multiple shows next year, and they've even hinted about filling a 100,000-seat stadium. Now, if they're going to do that, you would think that they would need something on the scale of a GSP Anderson Silva to finally do that. Personally, I think if they were going to fill 100,000 seats, you need that on top, and I would love to see a Hoist Gracie-Matt Hughes fight where they both fight their retirement fights, because Hoist really wants that rematch that no one else really wants to see. But if they're going to put the added stip of both are going to retire with this fight, cool. You know what? If Hoist Gracie was on this card like he had wanted to be, I would have been there because that would have been great history to see. But it seems like every time Anderson Silva and GSP get a victory, they've cleaned out their division, but they've got several more guys to face. I can't think of really anybody, and of course Nick Diaz is challenging GSP next. Great, I look forward to that. But outside of that, I can't think of anybody else to really challenge him or Anderson Silva. Are they just putting this off way too much, Rod?
Right now at the middleweight division, there are 3 major fights for the middleweight division. I mean, I don't know how many of them could be actual contenders to Anderson Silva, but you got the Chael Sonnen and Brian Stann fight. I think the winner of that is the number 1 contender. You also got Mayhem Miller and Michael Bisping, which will bring fresh new blood to the middleweight title contention. You also got Chris Lieben and Mark Muniz headlining the UFC on Spike later this year. If Chris Lieben wins, I'm not sure he'll get a title shot right away, being that great loss to Anderson Silva in devastating fashion. Still, I mean, people like Chris Lieben, and they like to see him fight. 2 more title defenses. Pretty sure that they're going to have him go to 205. I mean, just judging from fans' reactions and how much the Zuffa listens to what the fans say, I could see them trying to push Anderson Silva to go to 205. No one's really talking about him and GSP anymore. I think everyone's really content that he would really beat GSP. There's too much of a size difference. If John Jones could still be successful in his title defenses, maybe a dream match could happen with those 2. But, I mean, only time will tell, and you can't really predict too far ahead in this unpredictable sport.
Right. And Anderson Silva said that he is not going to go up to light heavyweight anymore, but things change all the time. And one of the things that changed recently was the Junior Dos Santos Cain Velasquez pay-per-view main event, because that switched around a couple times, but now it has been moved up to November 12th. The significance of that date, Saturday, November 12th, will be their first live show on Fox. 18 years, Rodney, to the day of the first UFC ever. We go from Hoist Gracie to Junior Dos Santos. I can't wait for this fight. I thought moving this fight up a week was the smartest thing that they've done in a long time. Now, of course, They have to sell a pay-per-view during that broadcast because it's a week later. Pay-per-view still is their major income source. They made $200 million estimated on it last year for pay-per-views. And going forward to Fox, the idea is getting exposure on Fox, bigger audience, more people buy it. Great. But you obviously want to start off hot, start off with a big fight. There's so many reasons why I admire this move. But before I even get into that, let's see what you think on the Junior Dos Santos Cain Velasquez 5-round title fight now on Fox, Rod.
Even when these guys are like still in the mix, I always want to see these two fight. And when the fight was finally made, I was just happy because I knew there was the number 1 heavyweight and number 2 heavyweights in the world of mixed martial arts fighting each other. And two guys who are undefeated in the UFC. Cain Velasquez hasn't lost a fight yet. Junior has only lost one early in his career. It's really going to be unpredictable to see what happens in this fight. Now that they moved it to Fox, when you better step the best foot forward, and you couldn't have picked a better fight to do this. I mean, people like to see heavyweights. They associate heavyweight title fights with the aura of like Mike Tyson matches. Big guys. People want to see the big guys slug it out. First of all, this fight is going to go 5 rounds. I don't care what they say. This is going to go 5 rounds. But to showcase these two first, brilliant move, and I'm going to be on my feet the whole 1 hour.
This was one of the best possible moves for not only just UFC, but MMA in general, because I don't know if MMA's ever even been on broadcast television before.
It has, but not UFC.
Yeah, okay. Well, it has, but, you know.
It's a big difference between the caliber of athlete Junior Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez are than Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, exactly. It's bigger than the whole, I guess it was CBS who did the deal, but Fox is the right kind of network for MMA. It fits it perfectly. This is definitely a bigger deal. They're treating this like the NFL coming to Fox for good.
Well, it actually is going to be promoted on NFL games.
Yeah, see, so now they're going to get an audience. In case anybody doesn't watch UFC, they're going to grab an audience who watches football, and who is not going to want to watch is they're going to see two heavyweights go at it. I mean, most of the heavyweight fights end in a knockout anyway, so I'm expecting that.
But it's also the right heavyweights, too, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. That's the other thing. It's the two best that they got. They didn't pick, like, two people that are like, They picked a real good fight. So this is like a history-making night to watch, and I cannot wait to watch that fight.
And not only by the right heavyweights, I mean, two guys that are obviously very skilled, stand up even on the ground, but an angle that I looked at it immediately that I don't really see anybody else pointing out yet is, firstly, okay, heavyweights, yes, are the big draw. Everyone wants to see the big guys, great, and these are skilled heavyweights. But Cain Velasquez is the first Mexican heavyweight fighting champion in any combat sport, boxing, MMA, whatever it is. And part of this Fox deal is they're going to be on Fox Deportes. It takes place in Anaheim, California, so you know there's going to be lots of Hispanics there. So I think Velasquez himself, just being of Mexican descent, a Mexican-American, and being the first Mexican heavyweight champion, a skilled one no less, this is a hugely important move, not just in terms of mainstream America, Fox exposure, etc., but also for penetrating the Mexican market. I think that's also very important as well. So your thoughts, Will Brooks, on JDS and Velasquez?
I love it. I mean, I don't have to pay for the fight. It's great. It also kind of reminds me when Anderson Silva went to 205 and they put it on Spike, and that was like a big deal, you know, because it was fighting, I forget who was fighting, some scrub, and he kicked his ass in like 80 seconds?
I think it was James Irvin, but yeah, he beat him pretty quickly.
And he whooped his ass. So I can't wait to see a UFC fight on Fox, free, and it's the badass fight. I mean, this fight was going to make money. You could put this fight on top of the pay-per-view, and it was going to make money. But now they're doing the way they're doing it, it's going to make a ton of money, but still going to be free. Love it. Can't wait to see it. My only hope is that Joe Buck is not going to be fucking in to ruin it for me.
The Hodge in our chat room points out that they are trying to line up Ben Henderson and Clay Guida. Now, that's going to be, I guess, a prelim because originally they said they were going to do two fights that night when they bumped up Dos Santos and Velasquez. Now it's one scheduled fight if they have time and it ends early, and they probably will because they said they're not going to spend a lot of time talking and doing pre-game videos and whatever. They're going to get right to the action. So I assume that they want to have enough time to be able to show, let's say, highlights of the Henderson and Guida fight should have happened, but that's another great fucking fight, Rodney, if they're able to show that too, as part of really America's, in a large degree, first exposure to MMA.
I honestly think that could be a co-main event of a pay-per-view, especially since the winner of that fight will pretty much fight the winner of Frank Yeager and Gray Maynard. I think that's a phenomenal fight, and I hope that the fight gets shown its entirety, because that's a fight that I really don't want to miss. That's a fight I don't want to find out what happens afterwards. It's going to be an exciting fight, and I'm saying right now, I'm saying Ben Henderson. Ben Henderson is going to pull it off.
That's my man, Smooth Ben Henderson.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of my man, want to welcome to the panel Orlando O'Neill. Hello, Orlando.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
On the agenda that I sent to you guys before we did the show was going to be who should Brock Lesnar fight next? And before I could even make my case about Czech Congo or Frank Mir, we know now, out of left field, Alistair Overeem has signed with UFC, and it is going to be him and Brock Lesnar on December 30th in Las Vegas to determine now the number one contender. See, Overeem was just the Strikeforce Heavyweight Champion. Obviously, they got rid of him because of the Golden Glory issue. Title's been given up, and he now signed with UFC. He says that they offered him the winner of Dos Santos and Velasquez, but that would be sometime in the spring. He didn't want to wait that long to get this pretty much immediate title shot, and they gave him a list of people to choose from, and he chose Brock. And it's a really interesting fight. More so for Lesnar than Overeem, I would say, in the sense that Brock was exposed so badly in the Velasquez fight, really, that should he have fought Junior Dos Santos earlier this year, would have really needed to fix those holes, plug those holes in his game, and really step up his skill set. And I really think he's going to have to do that with Overeem. And now it is interesting in the sense that Overeem last fought Fabricio Verdum, and we saw how horrible that fight was. The difference being this time, Verdum wanted to pull guard on Overeem and take him down into his guard on the ground. Overeem was having none of that. But Lesnar, on the other hand, does he have the skills to stand with the last K1 winner, this kickboxer? I don't know about that. And if he doesn't, is he pretty much going to implement the strategy that he has used in almost all fights that he's had so far out of the 7 that he's done, and take him down and use his 265 pounds to ground and pound Overeem? So it's a really interesting matchup as far as styles go, and geez, we just found out about this a few hours ago. So what do you think, Rod, about Overeem and Brock Lesnar?
Business as usual, huh? Let's see. They pretty much have no middleweight champion. Their welterweight champion, and probably one of their biggest draws, is fighting for the UFC title. And now their heavyweight champion is now fighting UFC's biggest draw. And
Scott Coker, incidentally, now that you bring it up, has said that they, first of all, they haven't even determined if the World Heavyweight Grand Prix winner is going to be the new champion. Probably not. Dan Henderson's deal is up, and he's probably going to sign with UFC any day. And they're not even going to bother making a new champion. So this thing is just all over the place.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, just think about it, Eric, what has happened in the past year between the WEC merger and then them purchasing Strikeforce, the Fox deal, Toronto, Brazil. Now we're getting to the last quarter of the year, and we got like a plethora of fights to be looking forward to.
Not only do we have a lot of great shows, they just confirmed their return to Japan in February.
Yeah, that's going to be great. And now you have Josh Koscheck versus Matt Hughes being the new main event for the Jon Jones and Rampage pay-per-view. So that is a fight that I've always wanted to see for years. But back to this heavyweight fight, I mean, when I watched the Cain Velasquez-Brock Lesnar fight, Brock did a lot better than I originally thought he did. I don't think Overeem is as dynamic and as quick as Velasquez. Hopefully Brock doesn't run at him and just use all his energy like he did in the first minute. But I do think he's a better fight for him, a lot better than Junior Dos Santos, because that one will last 2 minutes. I think he could take down Overeem. These could be two huge, massive guys in there. I just can't wait to see the fight. I can't actually believe we're even talking about it. I'm at a loss for words, Eric. What else can I say? Brock Lesnar is fucking fighting Alistair Overeem.
A lot of people are upset that Lesnar is pretty much now a fight away from getting another title shot. That's the way things go, I guess. I mean, he's the biggest draw that they've had for a few years already, and he was pretty much shot right into the title match with Randy Couture after getting one win that he didn't even really finish herring on. Hey, I guess that's the way it goes. Myself, I wouldn't have done it. I think a matchup against Czech Congo would have been more interesting because I don't think Lesnar should be in contention after how trounced he got in that fight. Sorry, Rodney. But Frank Mir's had a few wins, and we haven't gotten that rubber match, and you know that would be a big draw too. And I think for where they both are in the standings of, I guess, the unofficial rankings, since there is no ranking system for the heavyweight division or UFC in general, that I think it would have been a good matchup for them. Lesnar getting his first fight back after surgery and Frank Mir being where he's at. But still, Overeem is an interesting fight. So, Orlando, Overeem, Lesnar, your thoughts?
You were saying that Lesnar was exposed during the Cain fight. I actually thought he was exposed during the Carwin fight. Carwin just gassed himself out. It's a great fight to have. Like, I know he could do Lesnar Mir 3, but Dana White's all about making money. And this is a big money fight, and he knows he's going to make tons and tons of money off this fight. And I think this is actually, even though Overeem is the K1 champion and his striking is really good, I think Brock will be able to withstand it and able to hold him down. I don't think he was able to hold down Cain so much because Cain is also a All-American wrestler, but I'm not sure if Overeem is going to be able to withstand Brock's strength. If Brock could dodge all the punches and the kicks and the knees, I think he has a great chance.
You're not in Japan anymore, Overeem. Got to get off those roids.
Well, it's definitely a lot sooner than we predicted. We predicted next year, so I guess he's doing a lot better. I guess he's ready to go. I'm hoping that he does work on his stand-up because I remember when we were all watching that and we saw that knockout, we were just completely shocked. And we didn't even know what to say because of how Lesnar got torn apart and really exposed. And I kind of agree with Orlando that he was a little exposed by Carwin, but again, the wrestling skills got to really come in for Lesnar. That's his strength. Even though he's got, like, the punch power, he's really got to work on his stand-up as far as blocking goes. He's got to try to work on takedowns a little bit more, try not to get gassed out.
I don't know if he needs to work on takedowns so much as his groundwork.
That's true. Like I said, he is fast for his size that he is. I mean, this would be a real test for him to face someone completely new, someone who hasn't been in the UFC before. It's a little different of a fight, and I think that this is better to have this fight than having Mir right away, because imagine if Lesnar does, in fact, get a rematch for the heavyweight belt, wins it, and then faces Mir. It makes it even more of a bigger fight than ever before. So
yeah, that also depends on Mir getting into contention, too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I'm sure Mir and Lesnar both want that fight, but I think that this is going to be a good test for Lesnar, and we'll see what happens. I mean, is all this surgery and all this really affecting him? We're going to find out.
Yeah, and like you were hinting at, Dana White said that Lesnar would be back in early 2012. Of course, the rumors in the past week were saying doctors have told Lesnar to retire. You know what? That may or may not be true. But Dana White came out and denied it immediately and said, no, this guy's feeling 100%. He took time away from shooting little animals with big guns and bullets to feel better about himself to let us know that he is feeling better and he's going to get back in shape and training. So looks like he's good to go, but we keep talking about him being exposed and whatnot, but as far as groundwork, yes. In the first fight with Mir a few years ago, he did get out of a couple good attempts at arm bars and whatever on the ground, but then he had that rookie mistake and fell victim to a knee bar. He did finish off Carwin on the ground with the head and arm triangle, but what I really mean is if you go back and watch the Herring fight, for instance, I think it's very telling that this guy is able to use his weight and dominate people, but then he really pretty much had Herring's back the whole time. I don't remember him even going for a submission attempt, and he didn't even finish him off anyway. Now, I'm not saying it's Lashley-level embarrassing where he takes him down and literally doesn't know what to do. It's almost like when Dan Severn fought Royce Gracie at, I think, UFC 4, where, yeah, he took him down, had no idea what to do on the ground. I'm not saying Lesnar's that bad, but there's definitely room for improvement. And I don't know if we're necessarily going to see it in this fight with Overeem. But let's see what you think, Will Brooks, on how these styles match up, Lesnar and the Reem, as they call it. I will never call him that.
Well, first off, you guys know I love Brock Lesnar, but I'm a homer. I'm Dutch, and I got to go with the Dutchman on this one. I got to go with Alistair Overeem. Alistair the Dream Overeem. Sorry, that's what I'm going to call him from now on. If you're talking about styles, let's face facts. Brock Lesnar just can't get punched in the face. He doesn't know what to do. He's very shitty when he gets punched in the face. So as soon as Overeem starts unloading elbows and knees on him, Brock Lesnar's going to be confused, not know what the fuck to do. He's going to panic, and Overeem will take the victory. We're
going to go to calls in another couple minutes or so, but before we move on from mixed martial arts, I wanted to touch upon some guy who's in the news, and not always just for what's on the mat or in the ring or whatever, and that is the current TNA champion, Kurt Angle, who was just arrested yet again this past weekend or so. Now, he has said that I passed the breathalyzer, I submitted blood work, I was under the limit, I was fine, blah, 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 they're trying to make an example of me, whatever. But you know what? This guy has had so many personal issues and problems in the past couple of years. It's really sad to see, because even I told this story on the show before when I met him the other year, and he seemed zonked out of his mind and like just this vacant stare, didn't even know where he was practically. It's sad because, again, I think this guy, at least until he kills his wife and children, is the greatest wrestler that ever existed. Olympic gold medalist, perfect wrestler professionally. This guy has done everything in the amateur and professional worlds. He is the definition of the word wrestler, and he's definitely one of the greatest of all time. He's just an amazing athlete and performer, but man, lots of demons going on. So you know what? Maybe this one he's right on and he's okay, but it's just yet another black eye for that stupid organization that is TNA. We'll get to TNA in a little bit, but Kurt Angle stars in the movie Warrior that comes out this week. He plays a bit role of I think it was undefeated Russian middleweight, if I had it right, named Koba or something. And it was kind of cool seeing him in the cage with the glove picture and blah, 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 because, of course, this guy also claimed that he just tried getting in UFC again, and they didn't have the proper terms, so he didn't agree to it. Even though he passed the physical, they couldn't come to agreement, and Dana White said that's completely untrue. But he's also opened a website for what he's been saying on and off for a while now, and I guess he's actually going for it, and that's he wants to make the team for the 2012 Olympics that take place, I believe, in the spring in Iowa. And in addition to that, he did an interview where he said, hey, the UFC thing may not have worked out, but Bellator is still an option. Oh, geez. Oh, this guy is all over the place. Where to begin? So what do you think, Rodney, what's been going on with Kurt Angle, the Olympics, and a possible Bellator or MMA fight?
I want to rewind back to what you were saying about Brock Lesnar and his groundwork, because you criticized the man who didn't do much on the ground with his third professional fight, second one in UFC, against Heath Herring, which Heath Herring couldn't get up. He was stuck, and Brock Lesnar did a good job holding him down and saying that was the basis for his improvement. Meanwhile, a year later, I think he showed vast improvement by finishing Frank Mir, neutralizing Frank Mir's jiu-jitsu on the ground and finishing him on the ground. So I want to know what improvements from UFC 100 you saw that you think would be a problem in the Overeem fight.
Well, I don't know how much trouble Overeem would be giving him on the ground, but like I was saying with the Herring fight, I did not see one submission attempt. Yes, he was able to use his weight and ground and pound Mir to a victory, and that was well done and great, and he was able to take advantage of a gassed Shane Carwin and finish him with the head and arm triangle. So maybe I'm being a little too harsh. Maybe we just haven't seen enough of him, of what he's able to do. I think, in a sense, we just haven't really seen him tested so much as far as groundwork outside of the first couple fights. Like, let's say a BJJ world champion like Fabricio Verdum. If he was in the same predicament as Fedor, how would he have fared? That's more like what I'm getting at.
I think he would have gotten out. I don't think he would have made a mistake that Fedor made. A wrestler, especially like a caliber of Brock, wrestlers have a great base and really can work well on the ground. I mean, maybe they do get caught in submissions because it's just different, I guess, agendas on the ground. I think Lesnar can handle himself with almost just about anybody. If he can handle himself with Frank Mir, I think he can handle himself against Nogueira.
Well, that would be a sure interesting fight. Definitely.
Yeah.
But point taken. But what do you think about Kurt Angle and what's going on with that maniac?
I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know if he's just trying to put himself in the news or what, but I'll just believe it when I see it.
I'll tell you what, Rod. If he even tries an MMA fight, and he mentioned Bellator, I know he's billed as 240 or whatever. Bullshit. He's probably real more like light heavyweight level at best or so. Now, again, he played, I believe, a middleweight in this Warrior movie, so who knows. But if he's even thinking about heavyweight, Bellator, Cole Conrad is their champion. That's a big guy. We're talking
and a national wrestling champion himself.
Right. That'd be like the same size matchup as, well, maybe even less, of Couture and Lesnar. We saw how huge a difference there was there. Kurt Angle's probably even smaller than Couture is.
I've met Cole Conrad, and I've seen this guy.
I shot one of his matches last year. He won at the at Matrix Fights. It's the fight that he fought before he got signed to Bellator, actually.
Don't let the physique fool you. This guy can move, and he can move quick, and he would be a lot of trouble for Kurt Angle, and he can make Kurt Angle's MMA career very, very short and a painful one.
I really do question what's going on with him right now. I just don't see any possibility. He's talked about doing MMA for a long time. Why is he not acting on it? That's my question, is why has he not been acting on it? So he gets older, and older. He has so many other opportunities that he could do. Like the Warrior movie, that's a perfect movie role for him, or any other movie roles.
But that is acting.
Yes, it is acting. It's better than going into a ring. He has to look in the mirror and say, can I really beat these 20 to 30-year-old kids who are about the same size as me? It just doesn't make any sense. What's going on with Kurt Angle lately, it just boggles my mind. With the DWIs, he just got one in March, now he got one again. He's a heavyweight champion of a company now, and I just don't get it. I support him going to the Olympics. I hope he wins and gets into the Olympic Games. That'd be great for him. Great exposure for not only him, but for TNA too. But I just don't see it happening at his age. I just don't.
The kind of exposure TNA needs is the kind of exposure that shows or exposes their shitty fucking business practices and the horrible shit that they do to their roster and wrestlers. That's the sort of exposure they need.
Think about it. Without a drug policy or a strict one anyway, you see all these guys getting in trouble, and it's really affecting. I mean, look what the whole Matt Hardy thing, the Kurt Angle doing this, Ric Flair. These legends in wrestling are really starting to mess up. If they don't have like a drug policy on them, they're really messing things up in their lives, and it's really sad. It really is sad to see that.
How dare you say Matt Hardy's a legend?
Sorry.
But anyway.
Every time I see something about Kurt Angle on the website, I don't even click on it because, I don't know, I'm kind of passive and about him trying to be an MMA fighter. Like, his body is so beat up after all these years of not only professional wrestling but also amateur wrestling. I don't think he'd have what it takes to step in a cage and actually be competitive against the athletes of today. I really don't think he'd be able to have what it takes.
I just turned 26 not too long ago, and I'm starting to get to that point in my life where if I don't do something now, when I do want to do it, say a couple years down the line, I might be too old or too out of shape or too this or too that. So I guess I can kind of understand where Kurt Angle is coming from if he really does want to go back to the Olympics, because he wants to do it now while he's still in sick shape like he is, because he won't be in that shape forever. So I can understand where he's coming from if it's real, but if it's just a publicity stunt, oh well. I don't really care. We've seen so many shameless publicity stunts over the years.
Just from him alone.
Exactly. So I can give two shits. But if he really wants to do it, I don't blame him because, like I said, I'm getting to that point where either I'm going to do something now or it's never going to happen. So good for him, and I hope he makes it. I hope he kicks the shit out of the Iranians again.
All right, we're going to move on. There's no news this week, but I wanted to remind you that the polls are on WrestlingRoundtable.com right now. We've got new ones for you. The new polls are who should be in WWE's 2012 Hall of Fame class the most, and what independent group do you want to see make it big the most? No news this week, as I mentioned. There's just way too much to cover, and I've done multiple news updates this week, so go to WrestlingRoundtable.com and get caught up on all the news you need to know. There's no excuse now not to know something. Just read the news on WrestlingRoundtable.com. It's everything from amputated MMA fighters to Japanese and Mexican wrestling to everything that's been going on that you need to know. So let's go to Anthony in the Bronx. Hello.
Yo, what's going on, man? About Kurt Angle, man, it's a damn shame. Plus, like, I saw he was mad because he was on, like, number 34 on the 50 greatest WWE superstars. He should have just been happy that he was on the list. So there's a lot of people that's not on that list, you know?
Right.
So, like, for him to be complaining about that, come on, man. At least you were on the list.
I really think
And,
he's fucking bipolar, because this is how many times just in the past couple months that he goes and says something on Twitter and then takes it back immediately, oh no, my Twitter was hacked. And then this instance that you're talking about, then he comes back, oh no, I'm so happy to be in there, and I'm so happy, I love WWE, and it's all of a sudden just a complete juxtaposition from, what the fuck, I fucking hate them, take me off the list.
You notice how he started having all these problems, like, after he left WWE?
Must be all those black women he's hanging around.
Yeah, probably. But, you know, I don't know, man. I just feel bad for him. Like you said earlier, until he kills his wife and his family, he is, like, the greatest wrestler of all time. So let's just hope he doesn't pull a Benoit also.
I hope not. Let's hope that jungle fever doesn't get to him too much. Let's go to Ramon in Chicago.
Evening, Eric.
What's up?
Olympics? No. MMA? No. He's too old. His body's too broken down. He would get eaten alive if he tried either one of those. He really needs to just accept the limitations that he has.
Will was talking about exposure for TNA, and yeah, it would be if you're a company man, but even just for your own personal glory, if he's really telling the truth and he's physically okay and he's able to do it, yeah, good for him. I think it's great. But you know what? Again, the attitude of wait and see, I'll believe it when it happens is not bad either, because he's been saying stuff like this for a while now and even changing it after the fact. Now in the same interview he was about Bellator, he was saying that when he got out of the Olympics and he won the gold medal, he got an offer for UFC and WWE. What am I going to take? That's the first I ever heard of that. So let's go to Abe in Augusta, Georgia. Hello, Abe.
Hey, and by the way, Dev Seven never died. We're just waiting for it to come back. But anyway, the joke. But seriously, I think you guys did a show about the deaths of WCW and what it contributed to the wrestling, correct?
Yes.
One thing I will say about that is that if you watch WCW, I'd say in the mid-90s or something like that, or even back in the day, double day matches they did has reflected WB in a lot of ways, from Dubliners being cruiserweight style matches or great 20-minute, technical matches. Because they be back in even the 85 WrestleMania, that slow opening matches, and I remember you did a show about do opening matches make a pay-per-view start off very well.
Mm-hmm.
Since even, correct me if I'm wrong, 2000 or 2001, they started having more fast-paced opening matches to start the show off. So you think that was kind of an effect of WCW, or that just an observation?
I think it's more an observation. I mean, I think that's the least of their problems. Now, a lot of people will say that the cruiserweights or the cruiserweight-style wrestlers were never draws. Whenever we put on Guerrero or Benoit or those sort of guys, the ratings didn't do too well, and that may very well have been true to a degree, but it's all on how you promote it. Obviously, we could see how when you get a marketing machine behind certain level wrestlers, like even Jericho, he had the most jerky WWE career. It's so funny how they can have their cake and eat it too. They can make these guys seem like stars, even though they book them, at least in a traditional sense, like idiots and like losers half the time. And they still are able to make them look like stars. But as far as the opening match stuff goes, I feel like it pretty much started in the early 90s or so. I mean, Rodney, you've talked about the Rockers and Orient Express match how many times from the Royal Rumble 91, and I echo that even for the future Faces of Fear match with Haku and Barbarian at WrestleMania 7. That was a really hot opener. So you can see when you put cruiserweight or high-flying style guys in the opener, it gets the crowd started hot. And we just, as I mentioned, uploaded onto the website the recap of Bash at the Beach 96, and that opened with Rey Mysterio, and we saw that a lot in WCW, that sort of stuff. I do think that, again, that's the least of their problems. I think the overarching storylines and whatever were bigger problems than necessarily the match order or structure, but even Kurt Angle and Mysterio SummerSlam 2002, you have a hot opener and it gets the show started off really well. You could really see them trying that with Rob Van Dam at WrestleMania 18, Jericho the year before with Regal, etc.
I don't think so much WCW contributed to it. I think, again, as you were saying, with the classic Rockers matches, and I know this Royal Rumble 93 with the Beverly Brothers and the Steiner Brothers, if you put something of high impact, fast paced on to start the show, you get the crowd into it. I went to the recent Ring of Honor show at the Hammerstein, and the pre-show was Cole and O'Reilly against the Young Bucks. That got the crowd into the event. WCW was smart enough to do that because they knew they had to do that to keep the crowd in, because a lot of the upper mid-card matches kind of sucked back then. But
well, yeah, I think their bigger overarching problem was the crowd wasn't hot for anything on the card.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I just think it's more of a smart tactic for the promotion to use than a stolen idea.
Let's go to Joe in Las Vegas, coming out of the chat room and onto the phone. Hey, Joe.
How's it going, Eric? I haven't talked to you guys in a while. I'm sorry that I've missed out on the past few weeks, but it's good to be back.
Well, welcome back, and I want to know what you got to say.
Let's start with opening matches. I think you guys are overlooking one of the greatest opening matches in pay-per-view history, and it preceded the WCW. Yeah, absolutely. And it was right. It was right before WCW really got big. So maybe they stole that idea and ran with it. You know, put a hot opening match to start a pay-per-view, and that's how.
Well, I don't think they stole it, being that they started Super Brawl 2 with Liger and Pillman.
Valid point. Back to Kurt Angle real quick, as long as I have you on the phone.
Sure.
As far as his Olympics is concerned, let's not forget that he won the gold medal in 1996.
With a broken freaking neck. Which means a lot of cortisone shots that I don't think he'd get this time.
Well, let's also recognize that 1996, by the time the next Olympics come around, is going to be 16 years ago. 1996 is a long time ago.
He'll be 43.
Yeah. And you're telling me that he's going to be going up against guys from all over the world in their 20s? I really don't believe for one second that he's going to be able to hang with guys 20 years younger than him. You know, sure, he can do it now, running everything in TNA, but to be fighting, you know, the Germans and the Russians and the Iranians and, you know, everybody from around the world, it's just the competition is going to be too steep. I don't even see him making it on the American team. You know, with guys like Shelton Benjamin and Jack Swagger, the guys that we've seen come through that were all Americans. Brock Lesnar is another name that comes to mind. If guys like that are what's coming into the professional ranks now, what do they have coming down the pipe that'll be going into the Olympics?
Well, let's not forget Ruan Gardner, who was another huge guy.
I don't see him going MMA. I don't see him going to the Olympics. Honestly, I think it's just big work. I think he just wants to try to draw attention to TNA and attention to himself if he tries to do this, which, hey, at this point, any positive publicity TNA gets is a good thing.
That's pretty rare. Royce. And if you were Brazilian, I guess it would be Royce in California. What's up, Royce?
What's up, man? I want to talk about Kurt Angle and this whole Olympic thing. Like, you guys keep talking about the age factor, which is huge. He's, like, in his 40s. But you guys are seeming to forget him.
Hey, age is just a number.
I know, but it's like...
That's what I told the 14-year-old girl last night, too.
Yeah. Not just that, but his body 16 years ago wasn't... He didn't have, like, a broken spine. He was a professional wrestler jumping off cages and, like, destroying his body, broken neck. Like, just... He looked like crap. Like, he looks like crap still. Like, you really think that guy... He might... Like, if someone, like, catches him, like, in a bad hold, guy might get paralyzed. Forget just losing. So I don't think that's like a bad idea in all fronts. And the whole him and UFC thing, I think the closest thing we get to that is like another worked cage match thing in TNA again, like how they did in Lockdown.
Right.
Maybe with maybe with like, I don't know, AJ Styles this time, I don't know. And like one more thing, like it seems like people who go crazy, like these wrestlers, like I think working the leg really is detrimental to your career, because just look at guys like
and by working the leg, you mean our meme about all this typical smart mark, all that bullshit.
Like, look how crazy they all turn out. Benoit, Regal doesn't seem like he has all of his marbles. Who else? Bulldog's dead. Don't forget Dynamite Kid. He's like almost killed his wife and like paralyzed and stuff like that. And just like I'm just saying, like Danielson better watch out. He might be fine.
Well, I don't know how that's going to turn out, because, I mean, Dynamite was one of those sort of maniacs that would do superplexes off the top rope to the floor. And this was a guy who was like a natural Spike Dudley size who was on fucking horse steroids to get up to his size. So maniacs like that, strong style bullshit. So don't want to necessarily do that to your body. But speaking of doing that to your body, like I referenced before with the cortisone shots, this guy, Kurt Angle, was getting needles injected into his neck to numb it down back in 1996 so he could finish that match with the Iranian to win the gold medal. So I don't necessarily see that happening this time either. Let's go to 215. I believe that's a Philadelphia number. Your name and location.
Me.
Okay, me.
Oh, Tom, I'm from Levittown. I just wanted to talk about number one, Kurt Angle, and like as the caller said earlier, that he's in no condition to go. He's going against guys like third his age. He's almost at like Benoit's age. It's crazy, and he's like done almost. And number two, I also wanted to talk about Matt Hardy thing.
Yes.
I think it's like very wrong. Faking the suicide, like I want to know how like Mike Austin's family feel and Canyon's family feel, like, because they committed suicide and like faking suicide. That's fucked up, basically.
Certainly, those are the two recent cases. There's been lots of other wrestlers who have committed suicide, but those some of the more mainstream ones recently. But yes, fucked up to say the least. And let's connect that with Kurt Angle and the whole TNA situation, because I've talked about it before, and it's been on our message board a lot, Corey, about how really fucked up TNA is. I mean, I'm certainly not the first one to point out that Jeff Hardy is going to be returning in a couple nights on a show that's aired, I believe, taped from Alabama, that while it's airing that day, he's going to be in court in Moore County, North Carolina, on his drug charges. This is a guy who showed up fucked up to shows before, fell asleep, fucked up pay-per-view main events, blah, blah, blah. He still gets chances. His brother, who, how bad does it have to be when you're the fucked up Hardy? I always knew that live for the moment was code for do lots of drugs. He gets fired after how many problems he's had, and he's not alone. And that's to say nothing about their sexual harassment lawsuits, all the other lawsuits they've had, the fact that they don't pay a lot of these wrestlers very much. That's why so many of them are happy to be gone. What you don't hear about TNA is that the way the locker room works is that when everyone else is around, acting all happy and shaking hands and whatever, but as soon as the important people leave, they say, it's horrible here, we hate it here, they can't stand it here. It just seems like the most miserable locker room that's happened in a long time, and there's just so much wrong with TNA. And keep in mind, I haven't mentioned anything about the show, the creative sense of the show. I'm just talking about the business end, the structural end, and things have just gotten so seemingly out of control. When we talked about Kurt Angle before and other sort of things, someone mentioned no drug policy. That's pretty much true. They claimed they did, at least when they were being investigated. Dixie Carter got interviewed by the government when they were looking into things after the Benoit double murders. They said they had a drug policy. As far as I know, they've never suspended anybody for drugs. They've indefinitely suspended Matt Hardy for showing up late or whatever it might have been, but at least there's no violation like WWE has suspended so-and-so for their first wellness policy violation, sort of stuff. There's nothing formal about it, if there is anything, in fact, at all. So that being said, that's just the sort of environment that Matt Hardy was in. And to say it's fucked up is to say the least. So what he did was he posted this goodbye video on YouTube. Mr. Typical fucking I'm on the internet and on YouTube and Twitter emoing about ghosts and tasering my girlfriend and all this other dumb shit that he does. See, I never liked the Hardys, really. I mean, I was a big fan of theirs back in 99, 98 when they were doing dark matches and stuff, but ever since then and all the TLC matches and whatever, I haven't been really that into them. But you know what? People like him. I understand that. Jeff Hardy a couple years ago was like the biggest draw that wrestling had at the time. Fine. And people always thought Matt was the good one and he was the smart one and he's good too and blah, 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 and he could be a champion like Christian is now, and people were rallying, well, why didn't they push him, that sort of shit. But I never really was into them, and it seems the internet has really turned on them in the past couple years. All the little Hot Topic shopping emo girls aren't into the Hardys anymore, I guess. CM Punk's the new rage. But all the same, I was never really into him and his stupid rebirth shit that he always claimed to be going through every time he's going through stuff. And then he goes on the fucking internet on YouTube and posts that video with birth and death dates on it. Like, the date was supposed to be the next day. It was dated for the next day. And all these people called 911 in North Carolina. They got between 25 and 30 calls. They got Jeff and took him over to help qualm any situation. And there's Matt, fine, as the sheriff found him. And then he goes on the internet the next day like, I didn't mean to hurt anybody and I didn't mean to mislead. I feel better now than I ever have, which he says after every time he gets into a DUI and crashes his car and blah, blah, blah. Same thing, I'm going through a rebirth and blah, blah, blah. But here's what's the ultimate fucked up part about it. Because he goes on and says, well, I didn't mean to make anybody think it was suicide. Bullshit, you didn't. You know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how people just essentially marks, really. And I try not to use that term, but people are gullible and believe shit a lot. I mean, some of the more cynical of us could just be like, this is another one of his stupid fucking internet angles. But people actually genuinely cared about him and therefore made these calls and stuff, and he pretty much knew what was going to happen. I don't believe for a second he didn't. So what do you think about Matt Hardy, Corey, and this whole fucked up situation with him being fired from a really corrupt company?
Well, I didn't hear about the video until after the report came out that Matt was fine. So I took the time to watch the video more than once, and I noted on YouTube they had some videos posted of when he was in his own company, Omega. And I was watching some of his early work, and my first gut reaction was, has anybody between his WWE run or his TNA run ever
given him proper training?
Given him a CAT scan? Because before he got to either of these companies, he took an awful lot of shots to the head onto concrete. Now, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, but I believe that enough shots to the head involving concrete is enough to permanently scramble your brains, and I think that's what happened here. I think the drugs amplify whatever's gone wrong in that head, but I think that if people are serious about Matt Hardy living to see 40, they might want to think about urging this man to get a CAT scan, get some sort of mental scan or a psychiatrist, figure out what's gone wrong up there.
But WWE offers all their former talent and even current talent, I guess, rehab. And the problem is, like we've talked about wrestlers' problems on the show before, like Scott Hall, Larry Sweeney, etc. The problem is they've got to want to get help. It can only take so many interventions and people saying things and people caring about them, but they need to want to help themselves. And I don't know if he necessarily wants to do that.
It's funny how that worked out, because the moment SmackDown's over, right, and then all of a sudden I'm a follower of Matt, and then I see that video, and of course when it says goodbye, you have to click on what the hell does it mean by goodbye, and even though he doesn't say suicide, all indications point to it.
Right.
And it's very offending. They say that other people who had died from suicide, it's very offending that someone would do that, and that he got calls, like legit 911 calls to his house.
Well, actually, they called the sheriff's office, and then they went over to investigate.
Yeah. So, I mean, but the point is, people called because that's a pretty serious thing to happen. And imagine if that really did happen.
He took advantage of people genuinely caring about him, the fans.
Yeah, exactly. And then when that happens, and then people are like, he was just joking. It's not a joke, folks. It really is not. Something like that is not funny. He's taking advantage of the Internet. He's doing all the wrong things that we thought that Jeff would do. He's doing all of it. It's
Jeff
like they switched roles.
is low-key compared to Matt.
Yeah, he's very, well, I mean, as far as, like, messing up, I would say is the best word.
Whoa.
You know, I mean, Jeff's going back now to work, and Matt's not going to have work. And who the hell would hire a guy like this to their company? Well, the funny thing is, the moment that story went out when he got in trouble at DWI, he was fired right away.
But that's the thing, though.
Like,
they knew he had problems when they hired him in the first place, I'm sure, because you know what? That didn't stop them from hiring his brother twice.
No, I mean, I just don't, well, like I said, there's no drug policy in that company, at least a strict one, and it's all about who sells the merchandise. And Jeff Hardy is going to sell merchandise no matter what. Matt is not ever going to be up to the par of Jeff Hardy ever. And that's just something he has to face. And that's it. But this guy is fucking himself up. And he does need the help, and WWE will provide it to him. But he's got to get off his... Should he want it? And he should want it. You'd think he would try to fix up his life. It's just a really stupid situation. Any fan who's a follower of his or believes in it is as big of an idiot as he is right now. And I mean that 100%. If you are a follower of that guy and of the show and everything, it's like a cult now, and it's not fun.
Well, that's why I kind of liked it, because there's no way that people could have really stuck with him after that dick stunt. I mean, that was just really insulting and had to have turned off a lot of people. Did it turn you off, Orlando?
I paid no attention to any of the stuff the Hardy Boys do.
What about you, Will Brooks?
I actually gave up on the Hardy Boys a long time ago. Actually, part of me started to think maybe that was a whole publicity stunt just so people wouldn't talk about his brother anymore. So, like, people say, Jeff Hardy's not the fuck up. I'm the fuck up. Don't watch him. Don't worry about his drug problems. Worry about me. I'm an idiot. That way, when he comes back, no one gives a shit. I could give two shits. I haven't liked him in years, so to me, it's whatever. But Jeff Hardy, as much as I would love to see him not in wrestling anymore, the guy, like Will said, he still draws money. And anybody who draws money will always have a job.
In WWE, people were worried about their jobs because supposedly this brand split really half-ending. People were worried about their spots. I really think they don't have anything to worry about. See, like, people were talking about Triple H coming out on Raw and saying that there's going to be more SmackDown superstars on Raw as pretty much the unofficial end of the brand split. Well, not really. It's like that for Raw, but he didn't say anything about seeing more Raw superstars on SmackDown. Once again, the bitch, the B show. But all the same, is it really that vastly different than what they were doing before? I don't know about that. But what's interesting is this Super Smackdown that aired live on the other Tuesday did a great rating, did over 2, which is a huge jump from what they had been doing on tape delay on SmackDown Friday, which even the replay did pretty much the same number that it had been doing. So they got a double whammy there, and some people are speculating that this might have something to do with UFC moving to Fox. WWE wasn't expecting this, and now they might be taking up Friday nights with Ultimate Fighter. They don't want to go against that, and blah, blah, blah. So I think if it really was an experiment for Tuesdays going live, it worked. I think everybody overall really appreciated having the live show a lot better. I guess they don't want to wait for spoilers or finding out on Friday. Well, let's go back to Super Smackdown, which was the first in these super shows that they're going to be doing from now on, I guess. Is there an overall feeling on the Super Smackdown show that you had, Corey? We'll get into specifics in a minute, but what do you think about Super Smackdown? Was it a success? Is it something they should keep doing?
Actually, I know I've been very critical of WWE, but I have to say...
No, you haven't. On this show, I think that's the first time.
In this instance, though, I think this was a step in the right direction. I think that the feel was overall stronger. They at least tried to speed some of the segments along, so it wasn't just, let's open the show with 20 minutes of mindless dribble. And that really did help the ratings, I feel. And it looks like Tuesday did much better than their usual Friday showing. So I think that it would behoove them to move SmackDown permanently to Tuesdays.
I don't think you're alone, but let's get into the details there, because John Cena had a match with Wade Barrett, and again, being Super Smackdown, I guess in this case, it was lots of wrestlers from both brands, both rosters. So maybe if they do Tuesdays and it is Super Smackdown from now on to complement the Raw Super Show the night before, maybe it will pretty much be the end of the brand split. We're not quite there yet, but what do you think about Wade Barrett and John Cena?
I did like that. It was a little too quick of a match for me because it kind of kills Wade Barrett in a way, but again, they're showing the Raw talent versus SmackDown talent. Raw talent's always going to win, and they should because it's Raw. So anytime they try to make SmackDown look better than Raw, it just kind of is like, okay, come on, really? And they were building it up. What I did like more was Ricardo's trying to fulfill ADR not being there because of his visa issues. So that kind of hurt the show a little bit. But Ricardo Rodriguez is such a funny character for him and Cena. I think those two should have like a match at some point. But the opening of the show was actually really the highlight for that part.
Sin Cara took on Daniel Bryan, who pretty much after winning the briefcase is on a losing streak. And Sin Cara, played by Hunico, got the victory, but then all of a sudden turned heel. And much like I compared it to the Lesnar retirement rumors, of course, stuff with Sin Cara between Mystico and Hunico is all over the place. One day he's sent home and they're going to fire him, and then the next, they're going to bring him back. So it seems all over the place, but I think him turning on Daniel Bryan after the match like that, really out of nowhere, pretty much indicates that they're going to do Sin Cara contra Sin Cara at some point, kind of like Undertaker versus Underfaker. But how'd you think of the match, Corey, and the outcome with the heel turn?
The match itself was good. I really liked seeing Bryan doing the surfboard into a choke on Sin Cara. And then Cara turns heel. I really think they pushed Sin Cara's heel turn a little bit too early. I just read the spoilers. Apparently this week he's going to be wrestling Tyson Kidd, and then he's going to kick Bryan again. So I guess we're going to have to wait for the two Caras match. I think it's a little early.
I thought it was a great match. I really love Daniel Bryan's work, and I actually like Hunico as Sin Cara more than the actual Sin Cara. I like his high-flying moves a lot better, but I think that if they actually pull off a whole Sin Cara versus Sin Cara angle, I think that would be perfect because it'll actually give Sin Cara something to fight for instead of just having these random matches. Good matches, but just random matches. I think there actually has to be a storyline mixed into it to make the people care about him.
Joe in Vegas, who called in earlier, is in our chat room again and said, Sheamus versus Khali, that must have sucked. Well, Sheamus in full-fledged face form now against the great Khali. Well, Valfides, did it suck?
No, I don't think so. I think Sheamus is doing a good job in his face role. I mean, I knew that was coming at some point because he could pull it off. There's this whole story with Jinder Khali and then Khali.
You mean Jinder Mahal?
Jinder Mahal, yeah. So they had that whole story going on between them two. I don't know what the outcome of that's going to be, but Sheamus shows his dominance as far as what he could do in the ring. He's really becoming a really good ring general in there. Obviously, they're pushing for a Christian Sheamus feud coming up, which I think is really good for him. It's a big guy versus big guy match. You don't really expect much out of it. As long as Sheamus wins the match, which makes the most sense, it can't really go wrong. If Khali won, then I would say, yeah, the match sucked.
You just mentioned Christian, and I guess he, after a very long, drawn-out feud, and of course very long and drawn-out in 2011 means a few months, I guess, feud with Orton, had their blow-off in the Steel Cage World Title match on Super SmackDown's main event. Of course, right afterwards, they segue into Mark Henry's once-every-couple-year push against Randy Orton. People seem to like the match. Did you, Corey?
Not really. This was an okay match, but I really did not like the ending. I also didn't like seeing Randy Orton.
You mean the RKO off the top? You didn't like that?
No, he does that move so sloppy. I'm surprised Christian doesn't have a broken neck.
Wah.
I cannot stand the fact that they are pushing Orton this hard as a face. It doesn't work.
I don't agree with how she feels about the match. I thought the match was really good, but I agree with her on Orton as a face. I just don't buy it. But other than the past years when they tried to push Mark Henry, I actually believe in Mark Henry now as a top heel than I would have before when he was in ECW or whatever he was doing. I actually think that this is Mark Henry's chance to shine, to be a believable monster heel. And
you think they're going to give him a thank you world title run like they did to Kane?
For Cain, yeah, of course. He's been with the company for 15 years now, straight on since '96. So might as well.
Your thoughts on the cage match, Will Vafides?
I thought it was a very good cage match. I mean, every match that Orton and Christian have always been good matches, despite what Corey feels only because she's a Christian fan and Christian didn't win. That's the only matches she likes, is when Christian wins them. I like the match. I think cage matches are usually the end of a feud. I remember that. It always used to be that way. Like Brent Owen, they ended somewhat in a cage match, and now this feud ended in a cage match, and that's how it should be. They did every match possible except for a cage match. So they finally did one, and it was a good blow-off. And then it transitions to Mark Henry looking like a real dominant top heel. It's like if we never saw Mark Henry before this time, we wouldn't be saying all these things about him because he's built like a monster. So if you were to take out all the years he's been in WWE and you just put in the last 5 months of him, you would probably say he's going to beat Randy Orton.
So essentially a good main event for their big, important live Super Smackdown.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows the talent on that show, and it puts the two top names on that show in a match in a cage for the belt. And it got me points, so of course I'm very happy with that.
All right, let's go to a couple calls. Sean in Florida, you're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Hello, Sean in Florida. Sean in Florida, not there. All right, calls just went to shit. So let's move on to Raw, or should I say Raw Super Show, as it's being dubbed now. Now, the Triple H Nash Punk triangle, they had a contract signing on SmackDown, I believe, and now the twist is Nash texted himself for some ridiculousness. A lot of people are saying that a lot of this just doesn't make sense, and either way, the Punk momentum from the Summer of Punk 2, or whatever you want to call it, has really been killed off by the Click. How do you think this whole three-way drama is unfolding, Corey?
It's been fun for the most part, but it does feel like they're trying to rush this a little bit quickly. I was hoping for something stronger. Like, instead of Nash texting himself, what if the text came from John Laurinaitis or Shawn Michaels or Stephanie? That would have been a little more exciting, don't you think?
I don't know about that. But, Will Brooks, your thoughts on how this Triple H Nash Punk angle is unfolding, because a lot of people were pointing out, well, why would they change Nash and Punk at Night of Champions to Triple H and Punk in the same show? They think Nash has this medical problem, but apparently they knew that they were going to go with Triple H and Punk anyway before the show even aired, and WGN was reporting that Nash actually got offered a movie role. It's not a medical issue, because after all, he still is wrestling for a lot of different other indies, at least the ones that he hasn't been pulled from yet. So, anyway, Nash, Triple H, Punk, your thoughts so far?
This whole angle went to shit for me as soon as Kevin Nash reared his old-ass head. I hate the fact that Triple H, every time something good's going on in wrestling, he finds a way to book himself into it and ruin it. I can't stand it. Am I the only one who wants Triple H just to fuck off? I mean, really, am I the only one who just wants him to go away and let wrestlers be wrestlers and could let CM Punk do his whole angle like the way it should have been and just not ruin everything like he always does? Am I the only one who thinks this way?
I don't think you're the only one, but I think you're representing the type of fan that isn't the one that's in the arena cheering him, because he does get reactions.
Yeah, he gets a reaction because he's a name, but dude, he sucks now. I mean, come on. He does the same thing for like 13 years? Oh my God, he ruins everything. He like
Ric Flair's been doing the same thing for 30.
They're the same fucking guy. I mean, I'm not talking about even the shitty hairdo we saw in that picture on the Roundtable Facebook page. I'm talking like they're the same guy. They find ways to book themselves in the top spots and bury other guys and just keep doing the same shit over and over and over again. But somehow people are dumb enough not to realize until it's too late. Triple H, just fuck off, dude. Seriously, God.
I did have hope for this angle when I saw Kevin Nash attack him at SummerSlam, but then when I heard Kevin Nash open his mouth, then that's when it kind of went to the shits for me, because not only did he not sound motivated or seem into it, but the crowd wasn't buying it either. And I actually applaud CM Punk for digging so deep into Kevin Nash with all of his insults, because you know what? 10, 15 years ago, Kevin Nash was doing the same thing to Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, and now CM Punk's in that role, giving it right back to Kevin Nash. And I do think they definitely pushed the Triple H and CM Punk angle. They definitely did it too soon. Too soon. They could at least try to wait off till Survivor Series. Triple H is killing the momentum because every week we're kind of having, like, the same thing every week, and after a while it's going to get stale. And I don't know how much longer this whole CM Punk aura is going to stick with the fans, because if it becomes a weekly routine, I'm not sure that the fans are going to stick around and care much for it. So again, what he was saying with Triple H is kind of sucking the life out of this angle, I kind of feel like he is. He's just too involved in it, and I think they should have waited for a bigger moment to have this angle blow off.
This is far from being done. This is going to be a feud that still has a lot of questions not answered yet. Triple H just accepted last night on Raw that he's going to give up his COO against CM Punk. Now, that to me didn't make any sense. Why would he put that on the line and as a stipulation?
Just to let us know beforehand there was no chance of him losing.
Yeah, so so there is more to this, because now it's a no DQ match. It adds another spice to this match. And not only is it now just a one-on-one, now it's a no DQ. Now Triple H loses COO. There's more to it than this. We're not done yet with this whole feud. It's not over at Night of Champions, I can tell you that.
Right.
This is going to be
Nash
going
is going to
on.
get a beep this time instead of a text to beat up Punk. And then Triple H is going to have to be like, I don't want to win this way.
Yeah. What I thought was funny about that whole thing is that why didn't they hype that up like a week in advance? Like, why couldn't they hype up that on the website or anything that Triple H was going to reveal who texted him? There was no hype for that.
You can't plan ahead when you book on a napkin.
Yeah, well, but don't you think that if they did plan this ahead of time, let's say they did, let's say that they were going to reveal that, why wouldn't they talk about that? This is what started the whole thing. A text message started this whole thing. They didn't really show a hype for it. Eventually, there's got to be a Nash CM Punk blow-off. Would Survivor Series be a good part to do it? I absolutely think it would, because I'm going to it. It should be there. But I think this is going to go on for a while. But eventually it's going to fade out because CM Punk's going to probably have something bigger to do at Mania. Who knows what that is?
I'm pretty sure they want it to be Austin.
I'm sure they do. I don't think anybody's going to not want to see that. But as of right now, this is still a good storyline to me. It still has some twists and turns. And I do feel they have something going. Is it faster than the pace of everything once? Absolutely. It's definitely faster. But I'm enjoying it for what it is. It's better than anything else that's out there right now, I can tell you that.
All right, well, let's give Sean in Florida another try. Sean, please be there. Are you? Fuck! God damn it. Well, I know someone who is there. Royce, in California, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I have a few things to say about Raw, yesterday's Raw, but first of all, I had to talk about Raw a few weeks ago. Remember that Cena Punk match for the number one contendership? Was I the only one who laughed out loud when Cena did the crossface in Edmonton, of all places? I can't be the only one who thought that was hilarious. And
maybe.
and about Raw yesterday, that whole Nash x Nash thing, that seemed like such a Russo 99, like, it was me, Austin thing, like, oh, it's him.
I texted myself and cost myself 20 cents for you.
It made no sense. Like, why would Nash text himself? Why would he even text him? Why not he just run out and do it? What's with the text? It's like it's up there with Rikishi running over Austin for the people. And plus, was Underway got kind of a vibe yesterday when Alberto was trying to get all the heels to take down Cena. It felt kind of like a Dungeon of Doom-esque thing about it. Like, we need to destroy Cena Mania or whatever, but it missed the key elements of Satanic, Sexy Sullivan, Mecha Mummy, and Giant. It fell flat for me, and that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I hope Cena ends up in the Dungeon of Doom for him to say it's not hot.
Yes. It was terrible. It was great and terrible at the same time. So that's all I hate.
Abe in Augusta, Georgia, something you still want to say. What's up?
I was laughing when I saw the heels come out. I was thinking some old stuff from '94 when they jumped Undertaker, Yokozuna in the casket match. for just stupid reasons. But I don't mind the Nash and CM Punk angle. I actually like it. The whole Nash text himself. I'm thinking this: if you text yourself and you run out, then what's the point of you texting yourself? Are you gonna run anyway? That's the only kind of got me.
Yeah, I really don't understand that part either. But let's move on to something less confusing. Corey, the tag team champions currently have been given the name Air Boom of Kofi Kingston and Evan Bourne, and they took on the Great Khali and Jinder Mahal. Non-title match, but how was it?
It was okay, actually. I'm not really a fan of Khali or Jinder Mahal. I think Jinder is still way too green, but it's nice that Air Boom...
But he's clearly the chosen one.
Oh, no, please don't say that. It was nice seeing Air Boom win because I really didn't expect them to, considering who was in the ring with them. But it was okay, especially with Khali accidentally bitch-slapping Jinder.
All right, well, another tag team that people seem to be taking a liking to is The Miz and R-Truth. So these two feel like they're Jericho in '98. There's conspiracies against them. How do you think the team of Miz and R-Truth is working out so far, Will Lapidez?
Oh, I love that team. That is so entertaining to watch those two. That's the perfect combination. The crowd reactions to them, especially in Canada, man, they really, really got heat in Canada. I thought that was like one of the best segments they did on that show was that part. They really hyped up Air Boom as far as the tag team goes. They really made that really important, which was really significant. And when you put Air Boom together and then you got the Miz and R-Truth, they're really starting to build this tag team up. This is just the beginning. And I think Miz and Truth, even though they've been at higher statuses before, they're there to build that tag team up. That's what they're there to do.
Don't you think it's a good move for them, being that they're not in that spot anymore?
Absolutely, because I think they stand out more being in this role than they do going for a heavyweight belt.
Being that the main event scene, not to cut you off, but the main event scene about a month or so ago, a couple months ago, really split off from Punk Cena to Cena, Del Rio, and Triple H Nash Punk. This gives them something to do and keeps them prominent.
Yeah, absolutely. They're taking that role. They're really going forward with it. I loved The Miz in the plaid suit last night. I thought that was hilarious that he wore that. I can't believe he actually owns something like that. He actually makes that look good. I couldn't believe it. It's really great entertainment, and that's what's good about it. Not only do we have good wrestlers, but we have good entertainment, and I think we're going to have a good tag series between these guys to really build up something. And I can't complain about the tag division right now because right now they're building it up and they're doing it right. So can't really complain on that.
Well, their segment segued into Miz versus Punk. How was that, Will Brooks?
I liked it. I didn't think it was that bad of a match. It was good pacing, good match. I liked it a lot.
Zack Ryder has been getting on TV a lot more. The Internet Champion has been finally getting some spotlight that he hasn't been getting, and I guess that's why he made himself Internet Champion. How do you think Zack Ryder's exposure has been going so far on TV, Corey?
It's been going pretty well. I'm really surprised at how many fans are glomming onto this so quickly. It is kind of sad that he had to put himself over via the Internet, but it's working, and I'm curious to see if this is going to turn into a trend for other wrestlers to make themselves known better via YouTube, because obviously the booking team aren't helping anybody.
Well, that's par for the course. It's not unusual these days. I mean, we just talked about Miz, and how did Miz get into some sort of prominence a couple years ago? By the Internet show that him and Morrison did. Once again, guys who, well, we've got nothing for you, and they go on the Internet and make something for themselves. It's amazing that they hire a writing team, and yet this keeps happening with people. Anyway, the main event was a multi-man elimination match, Survivor Series style. John Cena, John Morrison, Alex Riley, and Sheamus against Christian, Dolph Ziggler, Jack Swagger, and Wade Barrett. Pretty big main event. How was it, Corey?
Okay, but I don't know. I just really wasn't feeling this one. But
why?
I don't know. It was an okay match, but I feel it could have been a little bit better.
How?
Well, for one, I think that the match was a bit rushed in some areas. There weren't as many technical spots as I would have liked. And I noticed that Dolph Ziggler...
Why would there be technical spots in an 8-man elimination tag? with these people, no less.
I like technical spots.
Yeah, and you're also a fan of ECW. So Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka didn't have any technical spots unless you consider wrapping a chair around someone's head some sort of Greco-Roman move. Who says there has to be technical wrestling in every match?
Well, it doesn't have to be every match, but once in a while is nice. I noticed that Dolph Ziggler was wincing a lot in the match, too. I heard a rumor that he had neck damage. He really should not have been in this match.
Well, it's better for him to be sharing the workload in an 8-man elimination than one-on-one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose that's so. It was okay, but I feel it could have been better.
I feel Corey's nuts. That's first off. Let's bring that up right there. First thing I want to bring up was Zack Ryder. They did a video package on him and showed his YouTube stuff finally, which I think helped him get over, finally showing him who he is. As far as the 8-man tag goes, there was a lot of mid-card talent in that match. The only guy that wasn't was John Cena. Everybody else was a kind of a mid-card status wrestler. So
more or less.
More or less.
Or at least like a semi-main event, like especially on the heel side.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a great match because it's exposing all these different wrestlers from SmackDown and Raw. I mean, Swagger was struggling for a long time, and ever since his Vicky Guerrero role, he's really been picking it up, especially in this match where he got 2 submissions. He looked phenomenal in this match. I think Ziggler looked great in this match. I think Sheamus and Christian did a good job in this match. I think Morrison kind of got killed a little bit, being the first one out, but he's getting his little punishment right now. But again, Cena's back on top, and that's how it should be. No one should be beating him because, if anything, the one thing that's hurting right now is the storyline between Alberto Del Rio and John Cena. That storyline really doesn't have much right now at all. There's no steam. Alberto should have been in the match, and he wasn't. If anything, he could have been the last guy, and he could have just walked away and not even wrestled in the match. He did that at one Survivor Series. He was in the match for a minute, and he left because that's who he is. Overall, I think the match was great. I think it really helped the mid-card guys really get up there, show their talent, show what they can do, but it did not help John Cena, Alberto Del Rio storyline, which is really what the main focus should be right now.
You said Dolph Ziggler was on this Vicky Guerrero role. I think Vicky Guerrero's been losing her roles because she's been losing some weight, and I think she's looking pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I God bless her for doing that. It's funny when she realizes it by watching playback. When you watch yourself on playback as a wrestler or anything, you watch what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. If she sees herself and says, you know what, I got to lose the weight, and I got to just look better for TV, and she did it. Just like Zack Ryder took upon himself to do a show that got him exposed and got him over. And that's what you have to do sometimes as a wrestler, which is why I'm not wrestling right now, but I'm still doing video shows to keep myself prominent, to keep myself doing something. So that's what you got to do sometimes when no one has anything for you.
We just talked about this big 8-man elimination. It was on the main event of Raw Supershow. Looks like it's going to be that from now on. This Super Smackdown experiment seemed to have gone real well. Maybe they'll move SmackDown live every week. So what are your thoughts on all these super shows? Raw, Super Show, Super Smackdown, Super. Is it really the end of the brand split, and does it really matter?
The super shows are a good idea for the most part. I'm curious to see if the rumors are true, if this is going to affect how certain people get pushed. But so far, this looks like a good idea.
I think it's a really great idea. I think by having Monday and Tuesday nights as wrestling nights, sometimes waiting till Friday to watch SmackDown sometimes it's kind of hard. But watching it back-to-back, Raw and SmackDown.
And it's a terrible time slot, too.
Yeah, and Friday's just the best spot overall.
Right.
Tuesday, 8 o'clock, I think that's a good time slot. They have to compete with Friday nights. They have to compete with football. That's why they got
going
SmackDown
out,
on there.
Going out, drinking.
Yep, all that good stuff that we do on Fridays. I think it's great for them, and I think they should go with that forward.
All right, and if you want to hear our original thoughts on the brand split, we did a show in the first season back in 2008 on the brand split, and you can find that here on blogtalkradio.com. You can find every show we've ever done. And coming up in a couple weeks, 2 more weeks, we'll be back with another show on Strikeforce World Grand Prix semifinals, ROH's Death Before Dishonor 9, UFC's Fight Night 25, TNA's No Surrender 2011, WWE's Night of Champions 2011. What a stacked show. We got a lot coming up in a couple weeks, but we'll always have content for you on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, even still MySpace if you have that. And also our archives at Go Fight Live, and WrestlingRoundtable.com. You want to sign up for the message board. Support the show by getting the Wrestling Roundtable t-shirt, wearing it to a live wrestling event or MMA show. And again, thank you for listening. I appreciate all of you who take the time to chat and call and listen live to blogtalkradio.com. So join us in a couple weeks for the panel of Will Brooks, Will Vafides, Coriander Ake, Orlando O'Neill, Rodney LeConte, and all the callers. I'm Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.